This is Unit 3, Lesson 2, Order of Operations. Suppose we were given a problem to simplify. Dan and Dawn have a difference of opinion. Dan decides he's going to do 2 times 4 first and get 8, and then he's going to do the division to get 9. Dawn disagrees and he says, no, first you have to do the division, 72 divided by 2, to get 36, and then do the multiplication and get 144. Well, these are clearly 2 very different answers. So we need to figure out which order is going to be the proper order. If we don't have a set of rules so that we're all doing things in the same way, bad things could happen. We need to all be agreeing as to what the correct order is, and that was determined a long, long time ago by some mathematicians. And the proper order for simplifying an expression is referred to as order of operations. We have this word here, germ DOS. That's a way of knowing and remembering the proper order for simplifying the various pieces of an expression. So you're going to need to write down what each of these mean on your note sheet, and if you don't have enough time to write, just pause the video in between each of the explanations so that you can write down everything that I'm writing here. The G stands for grouping symbols. You need to do what's inside the grouping symbols first. Grouping symbols include parentheses, brackets, absolute value bars, and big fraction bars that have expressions in the numerator and in the denominator. So go ahead and write down those grouping symbols as well. Next comes both the E and the R. That stands for exponents and radicals. Exponents are things like squaring to the 2nd power, or 3rd power, or 4th power, and radicals include square roots, and once you get into other classes, cube roots and 4th roots, things like that. Next comes multiplication and division, and neither of those comes before the other. You need to do any multiplication or division as it occurs from left to right within the expression. Very important, left to right. And then last is addition and subtraction. And it's the same as multiplication and division. You do any addition or any subtraction as it occurs within the expression from left to right. So make sure you have all of those rules written down. All right, let's go back to Dan and Dawn. Who was right? When we look at that expression, we've got a division and a multiplication. So it's important that we go left to right. You can see that Dan did the multiplication that occurred farther to the right, and Dawn did the division that occurred farther to the left. So in fact, Dawn's is the correct one, and Dan's is incorrect. All right, let's do some examples. Number 1. Take a look at this and I see there's an addition, a division, there's some parentheses, there's a subtraction, there's squaring. So the very first thing we want to think, G, grouping symbols. So we take a look and see we've got to deal with what's inside those grouping symbols first, inside the parentheses. So I want to look and say, is there one value in there? And there's not. There's some more operations that need to happen. So inside is a subtraction problem, we need to do that first. Now the way that we're going to write our steps is we're going to rewrite the entire expression, just changing that one piece of it that we're going to be simplifying. So I'm going to rewrite 29 plus 32 divided by, and then in place of 8 minus 6, I'm going to write 2, and then I write the parentheses and the squared. So every time that you do a problem, you're going to have to rewrite everything, changing just one piece at a time. So now we look at this and we say, okay, there's a grouping symbol, parentheses. What's left inside is just one value, so we're actually done with the parentheses, and now we need to think about what's next. And what's next is exponents and radicals. And we can see the exponent there, 2 squared. So that's going to be our next step. So we're going to rewrite 29 plus 32 divided by, and then we do 2 squared and get 4, and we replace it with a 4. So now we look and say, okay, what's next? I see addition and division. I know division comes before addition, so we're going to do 32 divided by 4. So I rewrite 29 plus, and I replace 32 divided by 4 with an 8. then all that's left to do is that addition. 29 plus 8 is 37, and we're done. So you can see your work is sort of in the shape of a cone, right? It's getting smaller and smaller as we go, and at the end is one value. You can see I've not written any kind of equal sign anywhere because this is an expression, and expressions don't have equal signs. You can see that I'm working from the top to the bottom vertically, not writing anything across. That's exactly how I would like you to be writing your work. Let's try example 2. All right. Sometimes it's hard to see the grouping symbol's absolute value, so you need to recognize those as they're written in these equations as a grouping symbol. So you can see that's what's going on here, is we have the grouping symbol of absolute value. So the first thing we need to do is simplify what's inside the absolute value. So I'm going to rewrite 5, and then my absolute value, negative 3 plus 7 is equal to 4. Then I rewrite everything else. Now, we still have some grouping symbols, and you can see that we have to take the absolute value of 4. So the next step is to write 5, and then we're going to write the absolute value of 4 is 4. Now, what's the relationship between the 5 and the absolute value? Well, the 5 is tucked right up there against it, and so that means multiplication. So when I rewrite it, I'm going to rewrite it. When I take the absolute value of 4, I'm going to rewrite it with parentheses, because parentheses are a way of showing multiplication. We could write it with parentheses, or we could write it with a dot. Either way would be fine. So now I've rewritten the absolute value of 4 as a 4. Now I look at this and I say, okay, I've got some grouping symbols, some parentheses, but I can see there's just one number inside. There's a 4 inside of one, and there's a 2 inside of the other. So really those parentheses are there not to show grouping, but now to show multiplication. So I see that I have multiplication, addition, and division, and then another multiplication. So we're going to go left to right with any of the multiplication and division. So the first multiplication I see is 5 times 4, so we rewrite it as 20 plus 18 divided by 3 times 2. And I say, okay, what's next? Next, any multiplication or division left to right. So the very first one we see going left to right is 18 divided by 3. So I'm going to rewrite 18 divided by 3 as 6. So 20 plus 6 times 2. And I say, okay, I've still got a multiplication. 6 times 2 is 12. So I'm going to rewrite it as 20 plus 12. Then it's just an addition left. 20 plus 12 is 32. You can see it comes in a cone again. No equal signs. One step at a time. Example 3. There's a lot going on here. I see some grouping symbols, so I need to do what's inside the grouping symbols first. So I take a look. Inside my grouping symbols is a few different operations. We've got an exponent and we've got a subtraction. So I need to realize that the very first thing inside the grouping symbols is the exponent. So I'm going to do that first. I'm going to rewrite 3, and still my grouping symbols are parentheses, replacing the 5 squared with the 25. And then I rewrite everything else exactly like I see it. Now I've got to say, okay, what's inside that grouping symbol is 25 minus 1. So I'm going to rewrite it. 25 minus 1 is 24. Now I take a look, and inside the other grouping symbol is just an exponent. So I'm going to do the exponent first, and then I realize at the same time as the exponent, I can do the radical, exponents and radicals. So I can do that square root. So we're going to replace 3 squared with 9 and the square root of 25 with 5. Now I look and I say, well, what's going on? I've got multiplication and division I've got to take care of next, so I've got to go left to right. So 3 times 24 is the very first one I get to. I'm going to replace that with the 72. And the very next one left to right is 10 times 9, so I'm going to replace that with a 90. Then I've got a subtraction and a division, so I've still got to keep going with the division. I'm going to divide 90 divided by 5, and that comes out to be 18. And then we just have subtraction left. 72 minus 18 is 54. I know it might seem very tedious, but it's important to go one step at a time so that you make sure that you get everything in the correct order. All right, another example. Now here we've got a big fraction bar, and that operates like a grouping symbol. So we can do all of the numerator and all of the denominator as though they were each in their own set of parentheses. So we can do one step at a time from the numerator and one step at a time from the denominator. So in the numerator, we've got multiplication that needs to happen first, and in the denominator, we've got an exponent that needs to happen first. So I'm going to rewrite 6 times 5 is 30, and I'm going to rewrite 5 squared as 25. Now we can take the next step in the numerator and the next step in the denominator. In the numerator, we've got addition and subtraction, so we've got to go left to right. And then in the denominator, we've got multiplication and addition, so we need to do multiplication first. So in the numerator, 8 plus 4 is 12, 25 times 2 in the denominator is 50. So now we've just got one operation left in both numerator and denominator, so we can do that. We get negative 18 over 54. Now we're at the point where we've got a fraction, and so we've got to do the division of the numerator divided by the denominator. We can see that that's not going to come out to a whole number, so we're going to just simplify it as a fraction. So the first question we need to say, hey, is our answer going to be positive or negative? And it's a negative divided by a positive, so that we know the answer is going to be negative. And then we need to simplify 18/54, and that simplifies to 1/3, because we can divide by 18 in the numerator and 18 in the denominator and get 1/3, and we know the answer is negative. All right, example 5, I want you to try this one. So pause the video, give this one a try, and then come back and see how you did. All right, here's our answer. Take a look carefully at every step and see how you did. And if you didn't get it right, I'd like you to erase and fix your work so that you have the proper answer. All right, another one for you to try. Pause the video, give it a try. All right, let's see how you did with this one. All right, take a look. We've got those grouping symbols of absolute value in parentheses. We're going to simplify what's inside first, and then proceed. Take a look at every step and fix it if you got it wrong. All right, that's it. Put your note sheet in your binder so you have it for class tomorrow.